Okay, so this is a beginner's guide to music production. So if you're just getting started, then this is how I would approach trying to learn music production. So if you're a beginner, how should you start? Well, if you've already got a PC, laptop, Mac, I suggest you use that. There shouldn't be any need to go out and purchase anything new, unless your computer is really, really slow. With regards to computer specs or MacBook specs, ideally having a fast CPU is really helpful, and having as much RAM as possible is helpful. So normally at least 16 gigabytes. This is going to vary depending on which processor you're using and whether you're using PC or a Mac. It's hard to give you any specifics, but generally the faster the better. One other thing to think about is hard disk space. So after time, loads of projects will build up, and buying third-party sound libraries, which you might do, will take up your space. So I recommend having at least 500 gigabytes hard drive, ideally in SSD format if you can. If you have less than this, then you probably will need to buy an external SSD at some point. But assuming you have this already, then the first real step is to choose a DAW. And that is music production software. There are probably over 10 of these that you can choose from these days, but here are just a few common ones: Logic Pro, Ableton, Fruity Loops, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, Studio One, and I've forgotten loads there as well. So first step is to choose one. I think there's two considerations here. One depends on which platform you're on, if you're on a Mac or a PC. So if you're on a Mac, you want to look at GarageBand or Logic Pro. GarageBand is free, Logic Pro is paid, but it's a lot more in-depth and is one of the most widely used DAWs in professional studios. The other consideration really is what kind of music you are looking to make, and perhaps the role you're going to take. So if you're recording bands, if you're going to be in the studio recording bands, you might want to look at Pro Tools, or you might want to look at Reaper. You can also use Logic Pro for this. But if you're going to be more the engineering type, then Reaper and Pro Tools might be the best two to look at. Reaper has a very good free trial as well. Now, if you're going to be making beats or electronic music, then Ableton, Fruity Loops are two that I would really recommend. You can also make this music in Logic Pro and a lot of the others. Ableton and Fruity Loops come best equipped out of the box to make this kind of music. Logic Pro is also pretty good as well, because that has a huge library. Fruity Loops might be better if you're just getting started, because it's a bit easier to pick up. Ableton's a bit more advanced, I would say, than Fruity Loops, but then Ableton has a bit steeper learning curve. Also, it's a lot more expensive, although you can get a basic version, and if you are inclined, you might be able to find a free version online somewhere. I actually started with Fruity Loops many years ago on a PC, but then moved over to Logic Pro on the Mac and have used that for my professional career since. Okay, so assuming you've got your PC or Mac, and now you've got your software, you've got your DAW, let's look at some other gear you might want to get. Now, you don't need all of these things, but they will help, and you probably over time will build up a little studio. Things like microphones, MIDI keyboards, speakers or headphones, audio interfaces. So if you're going to be recording guitars and doing vocals, maybe doing more rock, indie, this kind of things, then I'd suggest one of your first acquisitions is an audio interface. This will allow you to record these instruments or vocals in a high quality scenario. Some entry level ones here are the Focusrite Scala, and that has 2 inputs. You probably want to look at anything with 1 or 2 inputs to get started. If you're going to be recording a drum kit, then this isn't going to work for you. But if you want to do 1 guitar at a time, 1 vocal at a time, then at least 1, ideally 2 inputs will probably get you going. For a little more money, you can get the Motu M2, which I quite like. I have a Motu M4. Or you can get the SSL 2 or 4. Those are great quality interfaces, just a little bit more expensive, but a bit better quality. And then you can spend hundreds and even thousands if you really want to. But as a beginner, I would not suggest spending your money here. So if you're doing more electronic or beat stuff, you probably want a MIDI keyboard early on in the process. So a 25 key is probably the minimum you want to get here. If you're a proper keyboardist or pianist, then you might want more. You might want 61 keys at least. Generally 25, 49 will do the job if you're just kind of doing bass lines and synth parts. And even if you are doing rock indie stuff, these can be picked up pretty cheaply for around $100. They will just help the process of recording. If you want to record in drum parts, if you want to record some strings, you want to record some piano, any bass lines, this will come in really handy. Although you can click them in with a mouse, I find it's a lot easier, even with basic keyboard skills, to be able to input the data that way. Speakers or headphones, that's probably one other thing that you're wondering about. I recommend spending more money on headphones before speakers. That is because I think you need to spend a lot more on speakers for the same quality. Problem is as well, with speakers, you also have to factor into the room. So you don't realize this when you're beginning, but the room has a big impact on how good your speakers sound. So in my opinion, it's better to spend 100 to 200 USD getting some decent headphones. Beyerdynamic 770s, the Audio-Technica M50s are two I've used and both really like. And this is a really good starting point for headphones. So I would rather spend the money here than spending 400, 500 on speakers if you're just starting out. This way it keeps the cost down and it will help your mixing be a bit more accurate as well. And if you're going to be singing or recording guitar amps or bass amps, then you'll probably need a microphone as well, depending on what you're doing. These come in two main types, dynamics or condensers. And if you just want an all-purpose mic, the SM57 or SM58 will get you going. If you want something a little bit more substantial for vocals, something like this, the SM7B is a bit more expensive, but is great. Or you can look at things like Rode NT1A. And there's loads of different options here, but there's just a few. Okay, so the next step is to learn your DAW inside and out. And you can do this by watching YouTube videos. There's so many out there. You can do this by going onto forums such as the subreddits for music production, and each genre has its own subreddit. Or you can go to places like Gearspace, which is maybe a bit more technical but really good resource too. Tac magazine is really good. Sound on Sound online is really good, and there's many online courses and online tuition that you can find as well. Not meaning to self-promote too much, but I do offer courses and online tuition, which you can find out more at my website. Depending on what music you're doing, you're probably going to learn things in different orders and be interested in learning different things, but here is a list of things I recommend you should probably learn. So first off, how to record MIDI, how to record audio, how to edit MIDI, how to edit audio, how to use samples, loops, how to use synthesizers and software instruments or virtual instruments, how to use effects to improve the sounds like EQ, compression, reverb, how to arrange a track, that is really important, how to mix a track, and then how to master a track. There's lots to learn and unpack in each of these individual skills, but this is the structure I would go, that's the order I would go to start off. And the next step is finishing some music and getting feedback. So if you want to get better, and I'm assuming most of you do, that's why you're here, then you are going to want to get feedback on your music. Ideally, you have to finish some music first, and this is something a lot of people struggle with. So once you start making music, it really pays to figure out how to complete entire songs. It might just be 2 minutes, it might be 3 minutes. And this is my main tip for doing it. If you can get two different sections together, what I call an A and a B section, you can then just add an intro, add an outro, and then you're pretty much there. Once you've got your song, then you can share it online. Ask your friends, ask your family, and if you don't trust your mum's opinion, then go online, go on Reddit, post your song there, post to SoundCloud, and if you ask for feedback, you will get it in some of these places. And I will happily give feedback to anyone that asks me for it. Okay, so you finished some music, you've got some feedback, now you kind of just have to repeat the process, and that is to go over your weak spots. I'm sure people that listen might say stuff like, oh, well, your melodies aren't very interesting, or your chord structure's a bit boring, or perhaps your mix is terrible. I mean, that will be one that comes up at some point. For me, it took ages to get good quality mixes. So once you've got that feedback, go back, look to improve, watch more videos, read more articles, and just keep doing that until you get better and better until you reach your goals. And a key final thing is to remember to have fun doing music production. It is a fun hobby. It is great fun. At times it can be frustrating because you're trying to get a sound, you're trying to create a song, and you can't quite see how to get there. But over time, you will eventually get there. So try and enjoy the process as much as possible and have as much fun as you can. Hopefully this was a good roadmap for you. This gives you some direction for you to begin your journey of music production. If you have any comments, any questions, please let me know in the comments below, and I will see you on another video.